The following is audio and video content from Freedom Church and Pastor Sean Wood. For more information about Freedom Church, please visit freedomchurch.sc.
Well, good morning. How are you guys doing now? All right, you're doing good. Hey, my name is Sean Wood. If we've never met, lead pastor here at Freedom Church. It's great to see you. Hope that so far you've encountered the power and the presence of God in your lives, and I hope that we can be a part of continuing that journey. And we've been in a series, if you're first-time guest here, just kind of fill you in, called An Interview with Satan, thus the video that you just saw there. And hey, didn't Parrish do a great job over the course of this whole deal of Satan? I told him he's a little good at being Satan, like he's just a little good at that. But we've been interviewing Satan really to find out, what are we up against here? Because what we found out in the first week is that Satan was an angel who fell from heaven because he wanted to be God, and in him, punishment being struck down from heaven. Now we find, though, that he wants to bring us down as well. And so that's his desire, is to do everything he can to take us down. And he does that because he has a third of the angels who fell with him, who are his army, and he also has plans and he has schemes to trip us up. And what we've seen is that all of the sin that we all struggle with really falls into these three buckets of sin, and we saw them kind of come out in the first encounter that Satan had with God's people, Adam and Eve, when he first made creation. He went to go trip them up immediately, and he said, hey, here's this one fruit that God says you can't have, but I'm going to tell you that you can have it. And here's Eve's interaction with him that we see is at first we see these sins of lust, because Eve says, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, she said, that looks good for food. It looks comforting. It looks like something that would make me feel better. And so we saw that lust can be a really sin that Satan uses to trip us up, these sins of lust. And in many ways, he's winning the war of lust against our very souls. And then we saw that Eve said that it was a delight to the eyes. Sins of greed. Delights of the eyes say, I want that. I see that, I want it. I want to get that, and I like that, and I want more, and I want more, and I want more. And so we saw greed come out. And then the third kind of bucket that everything falls into, the sins of pride, to make one wise. And that was a tree, was to be desired to make one wise. And she took off of its fruit and ate, and she gave some also to her husband who was with her, and he ate also. And so we see this kind of sort of searching for pride. And so Satan uses these three sin areas to really trip us up. And what we've been learning over the last several weeks is, how do we fight back? We're involved in a war. We need to know what are our weapons. And so we've seen with lust, the way that we fight back is with worship. And so when we have a proper view of who God is, that gives us a proper view of who we are, and we will no longer worship our comfort, but we will worship our Creator. And so that's what we do, is we worship in order not to fall to the sins of lust. We saw last weekend that we fight greed, this desire to have everything, and this desire really that's gone haywire in our lives to kind of grab more and more and more. We say we fight that. When we feel greed coming up in our lives, we fight it with generosity. Our weapon against greed is to be a generous people, because when we are generous, we are kind of worshiping God, and at the same time, we're not worshiping ourselves. We're not accumulating. And so generosity fights against greed. And now this weekend, we're going to look at pride. Pride. Now, it has been said that pride is really the root of all sin. And we've said during this series that if you dig deep below the surface of every sin, you're going to find this sort of root system that's there of lust, greed, and pride. And I think that probably it is true that pride is really the deepest root. It runs underneath even our greed, and underneath our lust for comfort is this idea of pride. Now, let's look at 1 Corinthians 1, 18 through 20 and 25, and what God says that he will do with our system of wisdom when we believe that we are, when we have pride and we believe our system is best. Here's what God says about that. It says, for the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For the foolishness of God, the cross, is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. When we begin to believe that we are wise, when we begin to believe that we can seek after wisdom that is greater than God's, God says, you put your system up against my system, and my system will work every time. It will thwart your system every time. It will make your system look foolish every time, because God invented it, created it at all, and so he knows the best system. And so in the area of lust and sexuality, we have our own system, and we put it up against God's system, and it's not working out very well at all. It's not happening for anybody. No one's getting real comfort. No one's getting real joy out of the sexuality system that we have in place now. In fact, there's just pain and carnage and hurt that comes out of it. And then you take the money system of the world. We looked at that last weekend. You put that up against God's system. It's just not working. And we saw the system's not working at all. And so that starts to happen. And now we put a system against God's system that fights, and it's called pride, that fights against this whole idea of who we are and who God has made us to be. Because the truth is, we are all prone to wander in search of wisdom because we are a people plagued by pride. We kind of made fun of it earlier in our welcome time, the selfie. You guys, if you're on any kind of social media whatsoever, you know there are two obsessions right now. One is for everybody who takes these quizzes to find out what they are. Can I just tell you, you are a human. That's what you are. You are not a flower. You are not a car. You are not a whatever, a dog, you're human. So that's the first. The second one is selfies, and you guys all see it. Everybody takes, it's a new phenomenon. I mean, we used to take pictures of other people. Now we take pictures of ourselves. The phone manufacturers even added a facing camera to be able to do that, because we want to be able to a face-facing camera to do that, because we wanted to be able to do this whole selfie thing. I mean, we are plagued by pride. And this wandering is actually started really as a spiritual journey, this wandering for pride. I mean, for wisdom. When we're kind of out in search for wisdom, it's really a part of our spiritual journey. We're looking for the wisdom of God, but it can quickly go south, because it can lead to, if we're not careful, an act of worship. And that act of worship is towards this God of pride, this God of pride. And this God of pride wants to be worshiped. Satan wants for him to be worshiped. And God knew that it would be this way. In fact, he said, don't go looking for other gods. Look at Deuteronomy 6:14-15. It says, you shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you. So there is a God around us, lots of different gods around us. There's this gods of sexuality. We saw that it's the God of Asherah through the Bible. And we even said that I believe that these are spirits. These are a third of the angels that fell. The spirit of Asherah has been worshipped as a god, the God of lust and sensuality and passion. We see that there is the God of Mammon that is worshipped, this God of Mammon that is worshipped as the all power of money and riches. And then the same way, there is this God of Baal that was worshipped in the Old Testament, who was the God of mastery and of control and of self-power. And it is underneath this idea of pride that we're really worshiping another God, and that God is the God of Baal. If we look at our culture, even the culture of those who call themselves Christ followers, real quickly, we can see the influence of Baal in our culture. With Asherah, the god of sensuality, we see that the product of the worship of that god is sexual sin. With Mammon, that's the god of riches, and our worship of the god of riches, we see the byproduct of that worship act is debt. And so we get into more and more debt. And with the spirit of Baal, we see the worship of this spirit manifest itself as a desire of power and control. And it is this idea that we know best, we can do best, that we can make it on our own. And so this worship of Baal, this worship of mastery, this worship of control and power, it sort of manifests itself in a really unusual way. Probably a way that maybe you wouldn't put together. We can kind of see the byproduct of sensuality would be sexual sin. We can kind of see the byproduct of riches would be debt. But the byproduct of this worship of Baal is our schedules. They're schedules. If we look at our schedules, we will be able to tell the God that we worship. See, our desire to be in control can be best seen in how we spend our time. Now, if we were to sit down and we were just to have a heart-to-heart, in fact, let's say we could sit down and you had recently been told that you had very little time left on this earth. That will happen to all of us at some point in some time. And so we were sitting down and you knew you just had months to live. If we could sit down and I asked you the question, hey, what are your values? Like, what is it that you value most in life? Here's what I would hear. I know for all of us, we would say family, friends, and hopefully you'd say faith. You'd say, family, I love my family. I want to spend as much time over the next few months with my family as I possibly can. And then, man, I've got this tight core group of friends, and I just want to pour into them. I want to enjoy them. I want to spend time with them. And, hey, I'm going to need my faith. I'm going to have God walk me through this. My faith is going to have to be huge during this time. That would be our values. Friends, family, and faith would be lined up. But when the spirit of pride, of Baal, is on our lives, we end up doing things that none of us would say are our values. If we were to take your schedules right now and we were to look at them, there would be some disconnect between what you would say your values are. In other words, we live out our values through our schedule, and sometimes what we show is that what we say are our values and what we live out is not the same. There's a disconnect because we are consumed with achievement and power and mastery and control. And we think that we can achieve more. We can control more. We can be in power over more. And we can master more. And so we can grow in wisdom and we can become smarter. And if we will just do that, then we can make our lives better. And there's this disconnect that happens. Recent research shows that the average father spends 7 minutes a day with his children, on average. Take all the time, add it up, average it, about 7 minutes a day. I think if we could sit down with most fathers, there would be a disconnect between value and actuality when it comes to that. Then the average spouse spends 4 minutes a day with their spouse in actual, real conversation. I'm not talking about with 2 laptops open on our lap, sitting on a couch watching TV together, but real, bona fide conversation going on, growing to love one another, helping one another, praying for one another, 4 minutes on average. Even worse, we talk about faith as one of our values. The average American who, add a filter, calls themselves a Christian, take out non-Christians, the ones who call themselves Christians, spends 3 minutes a day with God in some manner, through a devotional, through a prayer life, all of it added up together, on average, 3 minutes a day. Now, we spend 8.6 hours at work. Now, I'm not just saying that 8.6 hours at work is a bad schedule. Some of you would say, I'd love to have 8.6 hours at work. That would be great. 8.6 hours is the average. It's probably a good work ethic. But what I am saying is there's something wrong with the imbalance. There's something wrong with what we say is our values. Very few of us, if we sat down and said, you have just months to live, you can do anything you want to do, your expenses are covered, you set your schedule, would go 9 to 5, baby. That's where I'm going. I'm going back to work. Very few. Some of us would. Some of us go, that's my calling, that's what I do. Most of us would go, later, right? I mean, you don't have to say it because your boss may be in the room, but you may go, later. I'm not going back. But yet, it's an imbalance that's happening. The funny thing is, we're at work thinking, I should really be home. I need to be home. That's what our schedule. I need to get home. And then we're at home. Actually going back to work is what studies are showing us. We work more now than we ever have before while we're at home. So we never disconnect. Here's another recent study. It says that 67% of Americans are what they would characterize as burned out. Look at your neighbor and tell him, you look burned out. If your spouse told you that, look, say, 3-4 minutes was a lot of time. We need to spend less time together is what we need to do today. All right, so here's the deal. Remember that verse from before? I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. In other words, God says, put your system up against my system. Put your pride of thinking that you can do it all. You go ahead and Frank Sinatra it. Do it your way. Go ahead. You put it all up against my system. I've got a system. I created the world. I made the world. I made you. I know how you work, but you put your system up against mine, and it says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. 7% of Americans are burned out. What we are doing is not working. Our system isn't working. Let me just do a self-test. This is just for you to just kind of think in your mind. Do you ever say things like this? Hey, I'm going to come. I'm going to come, but I'm going to be late. I'm just go ahead and let you know I'm going to be late because I got so many things going on. But I'll be there. I'm going to be late. Some of y'all are doing that today for graduation parties and such. You're like, I'll be there, but I'm going to be late because I got 4 other things I'm juggling, but I'll be there. Do you ever see things like this? Man, I wish I could come. I wish I could come to the dinner. I wish I could come to the party. I wish I could come and hang out with family or friends. I wish I could come with you, but I am too busy. Too busy. Have you said that statement, any, in the last few weeks to someone? I'm just too busy. How about this one? Man, people mention vacation. You go, man, I wish I had time for a vacation. What's that word? I've never heard of that one. But, you know, that's the joke. You know, it's like, what is a vacation? I don't even know what that is. How do you ever say things like that? Now, on the surface, we go, it's just, man, we're getting a lot of things done. On the surface, we go, we're just a productive people. On the surface, we go, man, we're just building a tower to heaven. It's a story in the Bible about those who worshiped Baal, who did that, and pride. Pride is what it really is. It's all just pride. Here's what we're saying when we say these things. I don't need God. I don't need God. I'll work harder. I'll do more. I can take on more. I can do everything and some more. My son Hayes loves numbers, and one of the things he likes to talk about is numbers, and he loves the number infinity. And every now and then he will try and beat me in a game. He'll say, I've got 7 swords, and I'll go, well, I got 8 swords. You know, and I'll pull out my lightsabers, and he'll go, well, I have 1,400,000 swords, and I'll go, well, I have infinity swords, and he'll go, I have infinity plus 7. And that's like the I mean, what do you do with that? Like, you can't beat infinity plus 7, right? But those of us who know math know infinity's it, right? You can't beat infinity. And for some of you, though, you think, I can do everything plus some more. It's pride. I don't need God. I'll work harder. I'll just work smarter. They told us in the 1960s and 1970s that the invention of this thing called a computer, and then eventually in the 80s and the 90s, the personal computer, and then now the mobile device, they told us this was going to just give us so much time. Like, we weren't even going to know what to do with ourselves. I mean, you watch the Jetsons and you're like, man, they just kind of float around. They don't have to do much because the computers do it all. They told us it was going to make more time. We'll just work smarter. We now have smartphones, right? I mean, they're so smart that they steal our lives for their good. We haven't worked smarter. We'll just work smarter, and I'll make all of this happen. Now, so if really what this is about is us attaining and us succeeding and us having an abundant life and for us doing more and more actually manifests itself in these schedules that live this crazy life, then what we as Christ followers have to do is kind of raise the white flag every now and then and go, wait. This isn't working. This isn't working. Our system of money, not working. What are we doing wrong? Let's read the Bible. Let's study the Bible. Oh, generosity, that's what we need to do. And then if we look at this and we go, wait, this is not working. This isn't working. We're all burnt out. We don't have time to care for people. We don't have the time to be good family. We don't have time to be good friends. We don't have time to develop our faith, but we're all super, super busy. Then we have to kind of raise the white flag and go, wait a minute. What do we do? What does the Bible say about this? Is there a way that God says we should manage our time? And if there is, should we do it? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there is. Look at Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Talks about this word, Sabbath. Sabbath. If you don't know what Sabbath is, it's basically 1/7. It's saying take 1 out of 7 Sabbath, and you don't work. You don't produce. You just stop. You don't do anything. And look, it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's interesting, to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. Now listen, this is important. You or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. In other words, the leader sets the culture. Some of you are leaders of people in what you do, your profession. Either you own a business, you manage people, you supervise people. It is your responsibility to help them to live this lifestyle, even if they're not Christ followers, even more so if they are Christ followers, to remind them that this is their high calling. He says, your male servant and your female servant, that would be much like they were the employers. They were the leader of that family. Those people lived with them. They worked with them. They were a part of them. He says, even your livestock, on down to your animals and the guest who comes into your gates. When people come to visit with you, your culture of Sabbath should be so just immersing that even the guests come in and you go, hey, wait, we don't do that. Like, that's not how we live. We don't live that schedule. In other words, you don't let guests come into your life and take over your schedule. You don't let people text you during times that you're with family and all of a sudden be at your dinner table in your schedule. You don't let the phone call, just because a phone rings doesn't mean it has to be answered. There was a time when we didn't have phones with us everywhere we went, so calling someone back within 45 seconds is not the rule. It doesn't have to happen. Anybody say amen? But we live in that culture, don't we? I mean, we're at dinner with our family, and whoever texts, they've got the right to be sitting at our dinner table all of a sudden, just sitting there. Hey, I just wanted to ask you something. Oh, man, what did you want to ask me? Dad, I thought we were talking, right? We were having a conversation. Oh, but somebody needs to ask me. Or even worse, they wanted to show me what they were eating tonight. You know, I mean, I just got to see. I got to see what they're eating tonight. Son, you're important, but what he's eating is more important. Wow, look at that hamburger he's eating. And that's how we live. Like, we make fun of it, but it's really how we live. We let people into our lives. Leaders set the culture, in other words. Sojourners in your gates. For in 6 days, I like this kind of smack talking by God. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea. I mean, he blew it out in 6 days, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. In other words, what you got? I mean, God did it all in 6 days, so what you got? Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. When you work on the Sabbath, what you're saying is that you are your source. In other words, I have to work. I have to never take rest. I have to always be going. There always has to be something in my mind. I can't ever stop, because I am my source. And if I stop, I won't have enough money. If I stop, I won't have enough done. If I stop, people won't like me. If I stop, the whole world will stop, because I'm in charge. Mastery, control. But when you stop and you don't produce, you're saying, I surrender myself to God. Because, see, God said this is the way we're to live. And if God said that this is the way we're to live, and he lived under this same law, and when Jesus was here, he lived under this law as well. If all this is what God said is best, then my 7 days can't compete with God's 6 days ever. Just like my 100% can't compete with God's 90%. I cannot compete with God. And here in Exodus, it's not the first time that we see the Sabbath. In fact, it is from the beginning. God rested on the seventh day. Up in this point, everything has been created out of nothing. In other words, there was absolutely nothing, and God created something. Now God flips it, and on the seventh day, he says, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to now create nothing out of something. In other words, God brought rest into being. Something very important about this character of God is revealed with the seventh day philosophy, and is that God stops. He stops. And stopping is a problem for humans. Have you guys ever found that to be true? It's just hard for us to stop. It's hard for us to stop during the day and have a time where we just rest. I talk to people, and oftentimes they're dealing with sin, and they're dealing with conflict, and they're dealing with all this stuff. And one of the questions that I'll ask is, hey, how much are you sleeping? See, God created our bodies to need sleep. But pride says, I don't need no sleep. See, wimps sleep 7-8 hours a night. I can do it on 4. It's crazy. We brag about the things that we do to break God's rules that he made for us. I don't need sleep. It's pride. I don't need a day off. It's pride that rears its ugly head. And on the seventh day, he stops, but stopping is a problem. We don't stop very well with anything. We get a comfortable house, and we go, well, I need to work harder. Need to get a bigger house. Need to get more things. We got a great piece of furniture, but man, I need another piece of furniture. I need more of this and more of this, and we just can't stop. We go out to eat, and we feel full. Everything's good. We should just stop. But then we see the banana pudding. And how many of you know God made banana pudding, but Satan uses it as a weapon of warfare against us in our fight to be healthy. And if I see banana pudding, I don't care how full I am. Food can literally be coming back out of my mouth. I'm still going to eat banana pudding. Anybody else with me with banana pudding? I mean, you can't be too full for banana pudding. We don't know how to stop. But see, God doesn't need rest. He doesn't need it because he created the universe. It's not like he was tired. It's not like God went, oh, man, I am worn out. I need a nap and just a rest, because these 6 days have been hard. He rests because he is holy. And everything that God does is holy. And so if God does it, it's holy. And so if God rests and God is holy, then rest is holy. Is that we brag about not getting rest, and what we're really doing is going, hey, I'm bragging about not being holy. I'm bragging about not keeping God's commandments, because it's simple math. Rest shows us who God is. He has restraint. And restraint is refraining from doing everything that one has the power to do. Instead, we go, what else can I take on? What else can I do? Look, I can fit that into my day. I can sleep less. I can do things faster and less less effective and less excellent. I can just do more. I'll just add more and more and more. And we never make the mistake that God's restraint was weakness. It wasn't because he couldn't do more. God could have done infinitely more. He could have done anything he wanted to do, but he chose to rest. Therefore, restraint and rest are holy. You know, one of the things for me as a pastor, and to make this just real for a moment, is I feel like, I need to, in some ways, be able to show and model what things should look like. Now, that's not to say that Connie and I have a perfect marriage, because we certainly don't. I am very honest about my failings, and I try to be real in front of you, and that I am just a man. But I also think that we should seek to live out what we preach. I think when it comes to my family, you should see that we seek to live out what we preach, and you should see our values taking place even within our family. When it comes to my finances, you should see me live out what I preach. And so I want to be, and when it comes to worship, I want to be one of the best worshipers in here. I seek to find new ways to worship God. I want to be one of the most generous people to model. I'm looking for ways to be generous. I need to model generosity. And in the same way, I need to model rest. And people say to me all the time, they come to me and they say, hey, can I have a few minutes? I know that you're so busy, but can I just have a few minutes? And you know what my answer to that is? I'm not busy. And I say that because it's true. I'm not busy. Now, some of you may go, well, I don't like hearing that from my pastor. You ought to be busy. Well, God said I shouldn't be. You say I should be. I'm going to go with God. All right, so that's where I'm going to go. I'm not going to obey you. I'm going to obey God. I'm not busy. Now, I work hard. I take things very seriously. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I am very much searching for excellence in everything that we do as a church, but I'm not busy. I think it's important that I model this concept and I fight really, really hard to do it. And the reason I'm not busy is I have boundaries. I've put up boundaries and just said, this is the deal. I'm putting up boundaries. Here's one of them. I take every Friday off. It's my day off. It's the day that I get to Sabbath. I don't get to Sabbath on this day. We have a lot of different things that go on Sundays. We have a lot of different activities that are going on. And so I take off Fridays as my day off. I'll break this sometimes because I am also, just like you, I struggle in this, but I usually will not return your phone call on a Friday. I will not return your email on a Friday. I will not return your text on a Friday. I don't meet with people on Fridays. I love my kids on Fridays because I stay home with the boys and we do stuff in the backyard and they eat dirt and we play together and we sword fight and we just do stuff. Like and then Isabel gets home from school and I spend time with her, and then Connie and I, we get to go on a date night on Fridays, and I guard Fridays. I guard it as a boundary. It's my Sabbath. It's my day that I just guard. And here's the thing. This is a struggle for me sometimes. And I'm telling you this to make it real for you because you need boundaries in your life as well. It is oftentimes that I will feel a burden because of that. Because there is always more ministry than can possibly be done. There's always more marriages falling apart than I can possibly be a part of. There's always more conversations that could take people further down their road and their journey than I can be a part of. There's always people who need friends. There's always people who feel left. There's always. Never stops. It never ceases. And what I've learned is that it is my responsibility to make sure that there is a system in place at this church to care for everyone. I think I have to bear that responsibility. As the lead pastor, that is my responsibility to make sure that everyone is cared for. But it's not my responsibility to care for everyone because I can't do it. It's not possible. So we've put systems in place, and sometimes that's going to mean that there are some people that get my attention. There's some people that don't get my attention. There's some people who get to be in community with me. There's some people who don't get to be in community with me. It just happens that way. And why? Because I don't love people. Obviously, I love people. I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't love people. And I would, honestly, because of my pride and the fact that I would love to get man, we can't do this without you. Our marriage would not have made it without you, and we couldn't have walked this without you. I would love to be involved in everything. I'd love it. I'd love to be. But here's why I can't. Because I want to obey God. That's really, at the end of the day, is what keeps me straight. I want to obey God. So in other words, it is impossible for you and I to obey God and to love people without boundaries that result in rest. We have to have rest. Why? Because rest gives you time to respond to the needs of people. And really, the bottom line is that's the only reason that we're here. As Christ followers, the reason that we're still breathing is that we are supposed to be in people's lives. And we have people that are our family who are our number one priority that God has given us. Friends that we live in community with, and strangers that the Holy Spirit will prompt us to offer hospitality to and to bring into our lives. And without rest, we will feel that all three of these categories of people are a burden to us. But rest gives us time to respond to the needs of people. Second thing is rest gives you time to hear from God. To hear from God. You know, I think that if Satan has his way, you'll live a busy life. I mean, just a tremendously busy life. In fact, he may convince you to live a tremendously busy life for God. Satan's okay with that. Live a busy life for God. Be doing it all for God and never hear from God. Never have time with God. So in other words, we're making good time. I mean, we are really doing this. We're getting somewhere, but we don't know if we're going to the right place because we haven't heard from God. We're working. We're doing it, man. We're going after it. Where are we going? I don't know, but rest gives you time to hear from God. 3, rest gives you time to do what you have committed to do. You know, we have an epidemic in our culture. People just don't follow up on what they say they're going to do. They just don't do it. Hey, I'll do that for you. Yep, I'll do that. Yeah, man, I'll pray for you. Yeah, I'm there. I'll be in your community group. I'll be there. I'll bring that. I'll do this. I'll help you. I'll do everything. Yes, 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 yes. We say yes to so many things, but we don't actually do what we've committed to do. And so what if you were actually able to pray for the people that you said you'd pray for? What if you were actually able to show up on time to lunch? I mean, what if you were able to be on time? To anything. Don't point at your spouse. It's like, what if you were able to show up? You know what? This is an aside. This isn't in the notes. This is free. You know what showing up late to things is? It's control. It's control free. So you go, hey, they told me I got to be there at 12. Watch this. I'll be there at 12:04 because I'm in charge. I'm in control. I'm the master of when I show up to places. Nobody tells me when to show up anywhere. You know what it is to show up early, which is actually on time, in my opinion. Showing up early somewhere says, I humbly submit to your leadership in this area because you've asked for this. You asked for me to be here at this time, and so I'm going to be here. Now, don't waste my time, but I'm going to be here. And so, anyway, that's an aside. You just take that for what it's worth. Some of you needed that. All right, so what if you actually showed up on time? What if you delivered a project ahead of schedule? Do you think if you delivered projects ahead of schedule because you had rest in your life and you were sharp and you only took on what you could take on and, man, you just always knocked it out of the park, that then you went to your employer and said, hey, can I take on this challenge or can I get some vacation here? You think that they would value you in that way? I think they would. A good employee would, a good manager would go, hey, you always knock it out of the park. You will get it done. In fact, I have some friends in my life who had this going on, and they went to their bosses, and they said, look, here's the thing. I'd like to spend more time with my family. My commute causes me not to spend time with my family. There are certain segments of my job that I can do from my house just as much as I can do from home. I've proven I'm a good worker. I always show up on time. I always do what I say I'm going to do. Can I work from home a couple days a week? And their employers went, sure. Sounds great. Spend more time with your family. You won't have to commute. You can be at home. They now have a kind of a flexible schedule at home. They get to be awake when their kids are awake and spend time with their kids and do different things. It's because they only committed to what they commit to. Rest gives you time to do what you committed that you would do. See, and every now and then, someone will come along at Freedom Church who honestly, I'm just making my situation real for you just a minute. They will have expectations that are outside of the boundaries that my family has set up. It's only happened a few times. But their expectations, for whatever reason, maybe it's the church they came from or their belief in what a senior lead pastor should do. And so they go, this is what you should do for me, is you should be available at any time. You should be able to be friends with every single person. If you just do the math, that doesn't work. There's like 700 of you. But you should be best friends with all of us. And they just have that expectations. And it's very difficult to say no. Say no. I can't. I wish that I could. But I can't, and I've got to protect my boundaries. But when we say no to some things, even good things, even good people, we're able to say yes to the things that God has called us to say yes to. And part of where I can get my boundaries from and why I can stay committed to rest is because I want to obey God, but it's also because I've decided what I want to say yes to. I think every one of us needs to decide, what do we want to say yes to? That's our first list. Should not be what are we going to say no to. Our first list should be what are we going to say yes to. Then we only say yes to those things. So here's my list, just so you'll know. I believe as your pastor, I'm to love and to listen to God. So I've got to work at that. I got to make sure I'm modeling that in every way. And that's obviously all of our responsibilities and should be our first responsibilities, but I've got to model it for you. So I better make sure I'm doing that well. Love and listen to God. Hey, I've got to love my wife and provide for her. That is my first responsibility outside of God, is to love my wife. And so there's absolutely nothing besides God's call in my life that's going to get in the way of me loving my wife. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to put her on the second or third or fourth shelf. It's not going to happen. Third is, I've got to love my kids and raise them well. There's two things in that. Number one, they're the third, not everyone else, but they're the third. The other thing is they are the third. They're not the second. Because you know what? One day they're going to leave, and Connie's going to still be there. They're going to be gone. They're going to have their own first love. They're going to forget about Daddy, and they're not going to sit in Daddy's lap anymore. But hopefully, Connie will still be there, and I'll have loved her well. And so they're not to be my third. Some of you have reversed that. Your kids are second. Your spouse is third. One day your kids are going to go away, and that second tier is going to be empty, and something else is going to take its place. Just write that down. You don't want to be in that situation. Kids are in third place. Then the church. I've got to lead the church well. And for me, here's what that looks like. Preaching and vision. That's what I pour most of my time into. There's not a lot of counseling that I can take on. I take on a little bit, but it's just not a time in the schedule for a lot of counseling. There's not a lot of even weddings. Sometimes other pastors will do weddings and different things because preaching and vision is the primary thing that I work on, and I work very hard at it. I want to have a crisp, clear vision for what we're going to do as a church, and then I want to be able to preach that well. I'm not saying I'm the best at it, but I'm doing the best that I can do at it, and I'm going to work hard to do that. The other is that I'm going to pour into our elders. We choose our elders with a lot of prayer and a lot of time, and those elders are to serve you. They're here to serve you in every way. Well, in order for them to serve you, I have to serve them. And so I'm going to pour into them, and we're going to pour into their wives, and that's going to be part of what I do. The other is our trustees. I got to be in a great relationship with them. They make all of the financial decisions, the major contractual financial decisions for our church. And so they got to know what's going on. They got to trust me. They got to know what's happening. I got to trust them. So I pour into them. And then our leaders. There's just some key leaders that lead major areas of our church that I'm going to check in with. I'm going to be able to have time for. And then I'm going to live a life with family and friends and community just like you do. I have a community group, people that we pray with and pray for, and babies we take food to when they're born, not to the babies, but to the mom. You know, babies can't eat the food yet, but they wish they could because we take banana pudding, but they wish they could. And so we take food to them, and we care for them. We can't do that for everybody, but we can do that for the community that we live in. And then within that community, there's a few people who can tell me, I don't look good in biker shorts. You guys, even me. Like, I got to be able to tell me, hey, man, that's not working out. There's a few people in my life who can give me criticism, who can talk to me, and I want them to. They're invited to, because I live in community just like you. And then if you look at that list, you go, okay, what's my list? What do I say yes to? Where am I serving? And what am I doing? For us, our community group is an area of service for us. I mean, we open our home for a community group. We put time into it just like you would. It's not counted for me within the context of what I do as a pastor. And so in order to say yes to those things, I have to say no to a lot of things. And without rest, you'll feel good about saying yes in the moment to stuff. You'll just say yes to everything. And then what you end up doing in that is saying no to everything because you never follow through and you never really live out your values. And so that's what we want for you. We want you to live out your values. And here's the deal. We want you to Sabbath. And I love you. And I want to tell you something. From the seat that I sit in, I get to hear your stories. I get to hear what's going on in your life. And I get to hear from community group leaders what's going on. And here's the thing. We need to slow down. We need to slow down and hear from God. We need to evaluate our schedules. Our wallet and our calendar tell us who our God is. And your schedule will tell you who your God is. And many of you have already thought it in your mind like this. You thought, man, it must be nice to take a day off like that. I wish I could do that. That's the enemy speaking to you. You thought, man, it must be nice to be able to have boundaries, which I was a pastor. I'd have boundaries if I was a pastor. Must be nice to be able to take a vacation. I don't get any vacation. I own my own business. There's no such thing as vacation. Vacation, what is that? I've never heard of that. You've been thinking that. These are lies from the pit of hell, and Satan would love to convince you that they're true, but don't believe the lies. Boundaries in your life have nothing to do with your profession. Boundaries in your life have nothing to do with who you work for or if you work for yourself. Boundaries in your life have everything to do with your obedience to God. And you might say, I'd get fired if I had this boundaries discussion. I mean, I don't think so. I really don't. I think most people are very reasonable, and we treat them like they're unreasonable, and we don't have conversations with them. I think most people would have great conversations if you're a good worker. But you know what? You might. And maybe you'll have to look for a new job. Here's my question. This is a very difficult question, but wrestle with this a little bit. Would you rather obey your boss or obey God? It's a hard one, but you got to decide, who am I obeying and who's got the most win for me obeying them? You say, I can't afford to have boundaries, man. I worked 3 jobs just to make ends meet because we're in so much debt. Listen to last week's sermon. Get out of debt. Live 10-10-80. Get some boundaries and margin in your life, and your life will be so much more enjoyable. You're worn out right now. You don't need to be. And then for some of you, I think you honestly say, I don't know what I would do with time off. I work because I'm afraid of the silence. I fill my day with my phone, and when I get home, I bring up the laptop because I don't know what to say to my wife. I don't know what to say to my children. I don't know how to do this thing. You need to get a mentor, and you need to get some help, because if you're saying that, I don't know what I would even do. I need to work. My family wants me to work. No, they don't. They need you to be the wife or the husband that they need. They need you to be the parent that they need. Your faith, your family, and your friends, they're suffering because you have that attitude. And most of all, listen, a lot of you, not just some of you, a lot of you, you're worn out. I talk to you, I see it in your eyes, you're worn out. And God has a plan and a purpose for your life. He has things that He wants you to accomplish, and you're not accomplishing them because you're so tired. You're so worn out. You're burned out that you're not getting a chance to enjoy what He's doing all around you, even within what is happening here at Freedom Church, because you're so busy. And Jesus spoke to this. This is what He said. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden. In other words, come to me when you're worn out, and I will give you rest. Some of your response time needs to be spent today repenting of pride. Then some of your response time needs to be spent thanking Jesus for the rest that He's going to give you. And then we celebrate that God is not a God who burdens us down. He's not a God who wants us to be too busy. That's the work of Satan in our lives. But He wants us to humble ourselves, to say, we can't do it all. We're not supposed to do it all. We're only supposed to do what God tells us to do. And one of the things He tells us to do is rest. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the fact that as we are in a war, you war with us. And that God, right now, I just feel like there's a lot of people in here right now, God, who you are stirring in their lives. They're seeing what they've never seen before as sin. A hectic, busy, out of control, chaotic life who can't make any room or margin in their lives for friends or family or faith, God. And so today I pray that there would be just an uncovering of that sin. It would be exposed for what it is, sin. That schedules would be submitted to you, God. That the calendars would be given over to you so that you can create something new in us. And that, God, we would Sabbath not for the Sabbath, but God, as you told us, the Sabbath was created for us. You knew we needed it, God. So give us rest every day to take moments of Sabbath. Rest every week as we Sabbath with you. Rest in just our vacations and our time to just reset and allow you to speak to us, God. Help us to fight for this. And God, at the end of the day, what it's really saying is that you are all that we need. Anything we lose because we're chasing after you was worth losing, God. Please help us understand that. anything that leaves our schedule because you needed more room in it, God, is something that needed to leave our schedule. You are all we need. Say it back to God. You are all that we need. Help us to respond to you humbly, God. In Jesus' name we pray.